Yay! Okay. We are getting rolling. There we go. Hello, hello, everyone. Can everyone hear us okay? Okay, hopefully we are all good. So this morning I have with me Dr. Nikita Patel, who is a naturopathic doctor, and she has a very strong spiritual focus. Okay, great. Glad you can hear us. And just very, very educated and experienced in the mind-body medicine. Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Wendy. And so during this talk for the Your Healthy Mind, Dr. Nikita talked all about childhood trauma, the different ways that it can kind of show up for us, and some tools and methods for how to help us transform that trauma. So very important topic. If you haven't yet had a chance to listen to her full talk, you can still get access to that by signing up for the Your Healthy Mind Summit. It's completely free. We're doing this for the month of May being Mental Health Awareness Month. And so free access to that. All you have to do is sign on up and you'll be able to listen in. So thank you so much for being here with us, Dr. Nikita. And if anyone has been able to have a chance to listen and you have questions, please feel free to drop them in, or you can drop them in as we go along here. So thank you, Dr. Nikita, for being here.
My pleasure. And thank you, Dr. Kirsten, for inviting me here. And thank you to everyone who is here. I feel so good to share everything that I've learned through my own personal journey, my intuition, my curiosity into spiritual healing and how that's translated into my work and my personal healing as well, and how my patients and clients that I work with love the spiritual aspect of the healing. So it's exciting, it's fun, and that's how I've always wanted my work to be.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm excited.
Yay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for being here. And so I think we can start out with maybe just kind of recapping. You talked a lot about like the ACEs study and just some of the potential causes of childhood trauma. Maybe we can just kind of recap a little bit about that for a starting point for us today.
Yes. I muted my Instagram just so there's no double voice. Can you hear me though on Instagram? Can you hear me? Testing?
Yeah, I think
okay. Awesome. All right. Childhood trauma. So first off, really quickly, I do want to clear up the definition of trauma that I am using and how there are different meanings to trauma in different contexts. And I go over in detail in the talk. So it varies. You know, when we think of trauma, we usually think of a third point of view, a third person point of view, observing and describing what happens between an environment and a person, or a disaster and a person, or in a between two people or a group of people, and that it is usually not diagnosed as trauma if it's not appearing to be life-threatening in some way. When I talk about trauma, I include that. But more than that, I include the subtleties, the subtle traumas that we tend to think of as bothersome events. This is a new word I learned in the conference I attended over the weekend, Energy Psychology Conference. I was like, oh yeah, now I have this new word to describe this subtle trauma that happens at a spiritual level. And it doesn't it doesn't appear to be life-threatening, but this part of us, it's like there is this part of us for whom it does appear to be life-threatening. And then there are these belief systems that come about, and usually it starts in the childhood. And those belief systems then keep recycling as we grow older and older, and then the experiences keep getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And what tends to happen is that even though this is all happening in the mind, in the spirit energy, the emotions, because we're a whole person, it's all connected. And what's happening in our mind, what's happening in our brain and the nervous system causes changes in our physiology. So that leads to formations of imbalances, of tissue malformation, disease, pathological tissue formation. And I'm throwing out different words just so everyone can connect with it in the body. And that is what a disease is, right? It's like, okay, well, pain is a physical illness, but pain responds really well. The treatment to pain responds really well when we do a mind body treatment, because a lot of that is coming from the psyche, our belief system, how our nervous system is sending signals to that part of the body. So when I say childhood trauma, I'm talking about the subtle aspects that wasn't fully life-threatening, but it was to some degree life-threatening. And there were belief systems or survival mechanisms or self-protective mechanism that was developed, which ends up becoming the cause to a physical disease for many people. So I hope that sort of gives you an overview of how trauma and physical illnesses are related.
Yeah, and like you said, you talk, you're able to go into that detail in that talk. So if you haven't had a chance, like we said, you can still get access to it by registering for the Your Healthy Mind Summit. And so I just really appreciated like your take on at least, of course, there's so many methods, and there's, everyone is going to resonate with something differently, right, for what works for them. But like you said, we are a whole, so we want to address these different layers of our health and of our well-being with anything that we're dealing with, right, with any type of disease or root cause of that disease. So but I love the spiritual perspective of it, and I think part of what you mentioned, and I think you just kind of hit on that with the fear, right, that is created when someone endures a type of trauma, right, no matter where on the spectrum that falls. And so part of that spiritual perspective that you brought was the lack of trust, both like in the unknown, but I think there's a lot of different places that this lack of trust could show up as. So I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah. I also remember what you had to say, and your perspective was very enlightening. I wouldn't say enlightening, but that word is awesome.
Yeah.
To some degree, I feel like it was, but it really opened up my mind even more, what you shared. So this I share from my own experience, and also my experience in working with and practicing naturopathic medicine and mind body medicine and working with hundreds and hundreds of people, is there's always this lack of trust in people who are experiencing chronic illnesses and who want to get well and who have their inner guidance coming through, but they can't trust it. There's there's that fear that Dr. Kirsten mentioned of going back to the time when the trauma first happened, of like, wait, I did trust life at one point and life screwed me over. Usually there is a belief like that underneath. Like, oh, life screwed me over, or my intuition screwed me over, or I trusted that person and that person screwed me over. So why would I ever put my life in danger by trusting another person or myself?
Mm-hmm.
Why would I trust my own internal guidance? What if I'm stupid? What if my intuition is stupid? Because a lot of us growing up are told that when, as kids, we naturally follow our intuition, and parents or someone will tell us, oh, that was stupid. You shouldn't have done that. As if we were born with the understanding of how the society worked, like how the made up rules of the society are.
Mm-hmm.
So then we start giving our trust to someone else or an authority figure who's like, oh wait, they know better than me. So a lot of people, some people, not of the people that I have come across, they even, though they want the holistic medicine and they're curious and they're reaching out and looking for a naturopathic doctor or spiritual healing, they can't take that step until an authority figure validates them. So that's another form of a lack of trust. When it comes to a physical disease, I feel like those are the earlier blocks due to a lack of trust that keeps a person from going into their healing. And it takes a lot of, what's that word? It's not, I'm
Awareness
trying to
or
remember what helped me overcome that barrier, because I was at that point for sure. I was definitely at that point. Um, the sense of safety, but also just observing, and then ability to also take risks, courage, choosing courage. So it does start with the mental practice and desperation. I mean, desperation really puts people in a place where they're willing to take risks that they wouldn't have before. Like, I'll do whatever it takes. I just want to get better type. So we don't want to wait until then to start getting well. Then it's even a longer journey to getting well. And sometimes some physiological changes can become irreversible. So we want to prevent that. I think what you mentioned, Dr. Kirsten, was when it came about relationship, how that shows up in a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So this lack of trust is, let's say there is a couple, a married, just for example, a married couple living together, and it's a very abusive relationship for either the guy or the girl, or non-binary person. So then this lack of trust is, this fear keeps them there, keeps them stuck. Like they know they want something better and they've tried things, but they usually relapse back into that same relationship of abuse, being abused or being the persecutor. And that is also that lack of trust in their own intuition and also other people who are helping them, who want the best for them.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that conversation came from that lack of trust in the unknown, or the fear of the unknown, right? Because I think so often we stay in those relationships, or we can think of even like environments, like our work environment, right? Those can be harmful as well. Like those can be unhealthy environments too, but sometimes we're afraid of, oh, I won't be able to find another job, or, uh, you know, whatever those fears, I won't be able to find as good of a job, or all of these other things, right? That fear of the unknown, that uncertainty. If we leave this relationship, I won't be able to find another relationship, or, that sort of thought pattern. But also, a part of that, I think, is when we kind of grew up in dysfunction. Like if we grew up in a home that was dysfunctional, then that feels more known to us, right? So sometimes
Yeah, familiar.
it feels familiar. So sometimes we seek those sort of relationships and environments out, even if they still don't feel good, but they feel familiar. So that's kind of another way that this can show up later in life. So if we can become more aware of that and those patterns, then we can start to hopefully break those patterns, right? Which is a lot of
Mm-hmm.
what you talk about.
Yeah, and that's what mind body medicine is getting to the root, right? Instead of judging the person for having this behavior, we get to the root belief
Yeah.
system and we get there, we feel the emotions that are there from that experience that was traumatic to the little child. It was overwhelming. And I didn't say this earlier, but the definition of the trauma that I am using is this: it's more subjective. It's not what a third person is viewing, it's more subjective. So anything that happens that makes a person um, feel overwhelmed to cope emotionally and mentally, energetically, spiritually, that is what creates the traumatic experience inside of a person. It doesn't necessarily have to be life threatening per the third person, but it feels that way, and that is enough to create a traumatic experience in the body.
Mhm.
Um, so we want to get to that space of, okay, well, what are these overwhelming emotions that came up when you were 2 years old, right? You don't have the cognitive ability to remember the storyline because you weren't seeing the world that way. So we got to work with the body in, okay, well, what was in the intuition? What was happening? And what are the feelings coming up now as you're going back to that time? And let's process that. What belief systems came up that are not serving you anymore? It did help you at one point,
Mhm.
but are not anymore. So, what are coming up, and are you ready to let that go? And if you are, then you do that work, you let that go, and you create a new belief system in place. And that's what you take into your future from now, right? We're not changing the past, but energetically, from the spiritual perspective, we're changing the energy, and that changes the mind and it rewires the nervous system in our brain, and that changes then the physiology in our body, and that then creates healing, or then the disease has no need anymore, right? to me, I see the physical disease as a body, the whole person's effort into bringing it to your cognitive attention. Like, hey, there is something not going well in somewhere in your body. So most likely, from my perspective, it's a suppressed or repressed emotion. The emotions are gonna be there. There's no we gotta let them go, or oh, we shouldn't feel emotions. Like
Yeah.
that is that is not true. It's like saying, oh, then let's not be humans. To me, like that's what it means. It's such a human experience, and
Mhm.
we don't want to block that channel of our emotions. We want to receive all of our emotions, the ones that don't feel good and the ones that do feel good. And usually, the people who have a lot of blocked emotions tend to not feel the good emotions so well either,
Yeah.
because there is this blockage to
Yeah.
emotions altogether. And there are a lot of belief systems to emotions, of like, oh, they're bad, anger is bad, hate is bad, shame is bad. Yeah, if we hold on to it and indulge in it and use it
Mhm.
to harm people,
Yeah. It's really the actions, right? It's what
yeah.
follows or yeah.
But the feeling of it is natural. It's okay. We can allow ourselves to experience hate, and we can allow ourselves to experience jealousy. And there's always a message behind emotions too, which was last year's
Mhm.
conversation, that I have decoded the messages behind each emotions and what they mean, and how we can listen to them and use that as a prevention to a physical disease. Like, we don't want to form a physical disease, so why not just treat at the root, at the very subtle level, emotional, spiritual level as well.
Yeah, and I think even like you mentioned jealousy, right? Like often we identify with our emotions and then that doesn't allow us to move through them either, right? We can
Yeah,
identify as a
yeah,
jealous person or an angry person or I'm just a worrier, right? Like there's
yeah,
these
yeah.
identities that we take on sometimes with these emotions and then how are we supposed to move through them and just experience those emotions for what they are when we begin to hold on to that identity, right? That's really what it is. Like you said, it's
Hmm.
like we're holding on to it.
Yeah, yeah. It is. I cringe when I spot this, when people are talking and I hear this, because I sense the discord in in the words that people are speaking, and um, even just if they're not speaking, even if it's just being around certain people, I can sense things, like, because that's how I've trained myself to do, energetically sense this discord, so I can guide someone to there for healing. So it naturally happens outside of work too. And I just can't help but cringe, because that's all I can do, without trying to doctor them or trying to fix them. And um, I mean, then I have to tell myself, and I do tell myself, okay, compassion, patience, it's okay. Let people have that.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's a good reminder, right? Because we can see that in like our friendships or coworkers or just being in life, the grocery store,
Hmm.
family members, like we can experience those, we want to put that judgment on people or we want to fix everything or right like but that's us. And so that's a good reminder too to when we notice that we're wanting to do that, um we can inject some compassion into those moments, because we don't know where it's coming from, right? Like it could be a part of someone's history that is carried out like this, is where it's kind of led them to feeling um like a jealous person, or feeling like a angry person, right? So having that understanding, I think, can help us just out there in life, right? That these are kind of ways that someone's trauma may present for them, later on. I think that helps us with that compassion piece. It's just,
Yeah. And I used to be a person who saw the world in black and white when it came to emotions. And it was the complete opposite. I didn't know what to do with my emotions. I judged everyone left and right because I judged myself so heavily. So I was reflecting that onto everyone else. Of like, oh, why are you being stupid? Like, why are you letting your emotions get the best of you? Or um, it wasn't outright like that, but I felt like my energy was like that.
hmm.
And I wouldn't let myself um, feel emotional. For me, it was always logic. Everything is logic. Everything is black and white. Why is it so hard for everyone? Until my physical body literally crashed. I mean, it felt like it just, the word that I used back then in describing this, it felt like the world from the the ground from underneath my feet just crumbled, literally. Like everything that I had known crumbled. And I wasn't doing well physically. I didn't have the proper help and support, even though I had gone to see my primary care physician. And I didn't have the proper guidance, and I was a teenager, and I looked into spirituality for answers. It's like, why is this all happening? I wasn't physically dying, but there was depression. I was losing hair. I was getting thin. Like I felt like I was slowly disappearing. And then I had this really mystery infection that became chronic and associated with stress. Uh, and there were other things before that and after that that happened, but that was the peak of my realizing that, okay, I actually really want to learn about my emotions. And I knew I always wanted to. I would see people communicating so clearly and so easily about what they're feeling, and I'm like, wow. I would just admire them. I'm like, wow, you know exactly what to say. I don't even know how to even say a word when I'm feeling something emotionally, or how to express my emotions in words. It was like zero. I had no idea. For me, it was like I would get irritated, or I would say something really mean, angry, and then I would regret later on, and then I would feel guilty. So I was trapped in that anger guilt cycle, sadness, anger guilt cycle. Then beating myself up, that's guilt, right? Like, oh, I'm a terrible person, I shouldn't have done that. Wow, and then shame, like, what's wrong with me? So I was stuck there because I didn't know how to properly express my emotions. I didn't know what to do with my emotions. And then when they exploded, I felt guilty. So I was just praying and praying and praying, and it was spirituality that really helped me come out of this. It wasn't a medical doctor or any other specialist. It was really my own inner guidance and praying and asking for help and looking into spirituality for answers that really helped me understand what was going on. And self-help work was a key for me in the beginning to understand myself better, to understand what emotions mean, to understand what's norm about the emotion. Because in the culture that I grew up, especially in the family that I grew up, I only knew that. So when I read the self-help books, I learned, I was like, whoa, there are other ways to be. This is not the only way. The world is not black and white. And that that's the spirituality was a big aspect in my healing, for
Mhm.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I think just gaining that self-awareness and, like you said, just different perspectives of how we can even live and perceive life, and just being able to gain different perspectives, I think can really help see those that gray space. There's so much variety, right, in how we can live and how we can feel and how we can um interpret those feelings and use those um, as guideposts for you know for where we're currently at. And yeah, that it's just a huge part of the process.
So so emotions are my passion, like working with emotions, because for me it's such a clear experience of an emotional imbalance leading to a physical disease. For me, that's how it manifests, not as anxiety or depression clinically, but physical issues. So that gives me that's given me a lot of understanding of what the connection is, what the healing process is, and that's what happens in the mind body medicine. It's heart centered. I use mind body heart. It's just
Hmm.
a word that I've made up because to me it's heart centered. It's centered to our truth. It's not just the mind, the psyche, and the body. It's the truth of who we are at the center of our whole being, involving the mind and the body.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, is there anything else that maybe came up as we were talking, either today or in the prior conversation, that you would um, like people to know a little bit more of?
This questions, the questions coming to my mind because I love questions, especially questions focused towards solution
Hmm.
for anyone who yet hasn't started on their inner work because they're not sure or they feel overwhelmed by it or they feel like it's impossible. So if you're in this situation, then ask yourself this question, and you don't have to answer this to anyone else but yourself, and let this come from your heart is what will it take? What will it take for you to believe that what you want is possible? I'll repeat it again. What will it take for you? What will it take for you to believe that what you want is possible? What you want is possible. So, what will it take for you to believe that?
Hmm.
Ask that to yourself. And it's not the mind that will guide you, but it's the heart that will guide you. Remain open to the unknown. Like, okay, it's not something I already know, it's something new. And that's what the unknown is. It's something new, something I haven't considered in my bubble of the world yet.
I
Yeah.
love that mind. I love that shift of it's not something unknown, it's something new, right? And it's just new to you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that so much. Well, where can people find you? Where can they learn more about you? And where can they work with you?
Yeah. So if you're here on the Instagram, I have an Instagram account, Dr. Nikita Patel.love. And I have another Instagram account, vibrant.goddess. So you can follow both. It's a little different in the content that I post. And my website, Dr. Dr. like the Instagram account, Dr. NikitaPatel.com. And the way we get started working together is through the Vibrant Goddess call. And I work with people who are sensitive, energy sensitive, intuitive, and maybe you don't even know that you're energy sensitive or intuitive, but you understand what I'm saying. So that means we can work together and you'll understand what I'm saying, and there will be healing. And I'll teach you what it's like to be a sensitive person and uh, how the world, the lifestyle can be changed or modified to accommodate that, like accommodate your sensitivity so that it's not causing a conflict within. And then how to also follow your intuition, because that is the best guidance that you can have is your own intuition. And let that healing machine that we are, our body's just miraculous healing machine, let that keep you well. So that's that's the main thing, the general thing we focus on in working together.
Mhm.
And I have a Facebook group as well, which is private and it's for goddesses only, the Vibrant Goddess Collective. So you can find the link to the Facebook group on my website as well. Yeah.
Wonderful. And you also have your newsletter, right? That
Oh,
people can
thank
sign
you.
up for.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I've been putting together this program in 21 days, no, 21 weeks. I did 21 days at one point, but it's 21 weeks of self-care to well-being. And we work together in this group, which is like our community support system, which can continue for a lifetime individually on, after the program ends too, to work on lifestyle habits as a group, because I noticed that support really helps in creating long-term changes. And I'm here to guide you. And if there are any blocks, then I'm here to assist you in overcoming them as well. Yeah.
Wonderful. Does anyone have any questions before we kind of close up for today? I think we got through so much. So thank you so much, Dr. Nikita, for taking the time and being with us today. And thank you all for taking the time to join us. Like I said, if you haven't yet watched Dr. Nikita's full talk, you can get access to that through the Your Healthy Mind Summit, which is completely free. So go ahead and register for that at drkirsten.com/YHM22, which is Your Healthy Mind 22. So you can feel free to sign up for that. And thank you all, like I said, so much for taking the time to tune in. And we'll see you at the next live. All right. Have a
Yeah,
good
thank
day, everyone.
you.
Thanks.